My greedy daughter-in-law and my son treated me like trash for 6 years. When my wife passed away, I kept our 11 million fortune a secret before deciding their inheritance. I tested them by asking to borrow $75 for medication. She threw a glass of water in my face and screamed, "Drop dead already, you worthless old leech." On Tuesday, I sold every property they thought was theirs, transferred their savings to charity, and left them a letter that made them call me 47 times in 1 hour. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end and comment where you're watching from so I can see how far this reaches. My name is Walter and I'm 64 years old. 8 months ago, I buried my wife Dorothy after 39 years of marriage. What I never expected was that her death would finally show me who my own son really was. I was sitting in the cramped living room of the basement apartment my son and his wife had so generously let me move into after Dorothy's funeral. The ceiling was so low I could touch it if I raised my arm. The only window looked out at ground level onto their perfectly manicured lawn, so all I could see were feet walking by and the occasional squirrel. My son Bradley was 41 years old, a mid-level accountant who believed he was destined for greater things. His wife Megan had convinced him of that along with many other things over the past 6 years. Things like the idea that his aging parents were nothing but a financial drain, that every dollar spent on us was a dollar stolen from their future, that keeping me in their basement was an act of extraordinary charity. The irony could have killed me if I let it. The basement apartment had been Dorothy's idea. Actually, not the living there part, but the existing part. When Bradley first brought Megan home for Thanksgiving 7 years ago, Dorothy had watched her scan our living room like a real estate appraiser, had seen her eyes linger on the antique grandfather clock, the original paintings we'd collected during our travels, the Persian rugs that had been in my family for 3 generations. "She's calculating," Dorothy had whispered to me that night as we cleaned dishes. "Everything about her is calculated." Dorothy had spent 35 years as a commercial real estate attorney. She could read a contract or a person in minutes. She'd made us wealthy through smart investments, careful planning, and an almost supernatural ability to spot a bad deal before it went bad. We decided that night to run a test. We would hide our wealth, play the role of comfortable but struggling retirees. If Megan was after money, she would lose interest. If she truly loved Bradley, our financial situation wouldn't matter. Megan didn't lose interest, she doubled down. Over the next 2 years, she convinced Bradley that his parents were too proud to ask for help, that we were struggling more than we let on, that a good son would step up and take care of his aging parents before it was too late. Bradley bought it every word. He started helping us manage our finances, convinced us to sell our house and move into something smaller to reduce our expenses. Gradually took control of our bank accounts, our bills, our daily lives, all to make things easier for us in our golden years. What he didn't know was that for every account he saw, there were 10 he didn't. For every dollar he managed, Dorothy had hidden 100 more in trusts, corporations, and offshore accounts that Bradley had never heard of. Our real estate holdings alone were worth more than Bradley would earn in 3 lifetimes. Our investment portfolios, our business interests, our silent partnerships and companies across 4 states, all of it invisible to our own son. We watched, we waited. We hoped Bradley would see through Megan's manipulation and come back to us. He never did. Dorothy died believing our son would eventually wake up. That grief would strip away Megan's influence and reveal the good man we'd raised. But 8 months of watching Bradley stand by silently while his wife treated me like garbage had taught me something my wife hadn't lived to learn. Some people only understand consequences. I heard the basement door open without a knock. Megan never knocked. Why would she? This was her house, her investment, her charity project sitting in the basement. "Walter," her voice cut through the morning silence like a blade. "We need to discuss your living situation." I looked up from my cold coffee to see my daughter-in-law descending the stairs. Megan was 38, blonde in that expensive way that required monthly salon visits, and dressed in workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She had the look of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. "Good morning to you too, Megan." She reached the bottom of the stairs and wrinkled her nose slightly. The basement always smelled a bit musty, no matter how much I cleaned it. Bradley and I have been going over our finances, and we've realized that having you here is costing us more than we anticipated. I pay for my own groceries. I stay out of your way. What exactly is costing you? The utilities, Walter. The water you use, the electricity for this space, the heating in winter. It adds up. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through what looked like a spreadsheet. We've calculated that your presence costs us approximately $800 a month in additional expenses. At $800, I almost laughed. The watch Dorothy had given me for our 30th anniversary, which I kept hidden in a sock drawer upstairs, was worth $60,000. We've decided you need to start paying rent, Megan continued. $750 a month plus your share of utilities. That should cover things. Megan, you know I'm living on Social Security. Dorothy's medical bills took everything we had saved. The lie came out smooth and practiced. Dorothy and I had been telling this story for years. That's not our problem. Her voice had that edge now, the one that always came out when she didn't get what she wanted immediately. You're a 64-year-old man. Figure something out. Get a job. Apply for assistance. Whatever it takes. I set my coffee down carefully. What if I can't come up with that kind of money right away? Could I perhaps borrow $75 to cover my blood pressure medication until my next check comes in? The pharmacy won't fill it without payment. The transformation in Megan's face was instant and ugly. Her features twisted into something that revealed exactly who she was beneath the Botox and the carefully applied makeup. Are you serious right now? She took a step closer, her voice rising. You want us to give you money after everything we're already doing for you? It's just $75, Megan. For medication, I'll pay it back. Pay it back with what? Your imaginary savings. Your fake promises, she was shouting now, her carefully constructed image cracking wide open. You're nothing but a burden, Walter. A useless, pathetic burden that we got stuck with because Bradley's mother had to go and die and leave us with her deadbeat husband. Megan, don't. Just don't. She grabbed the glass of water from my table and threw it directly in my face. The cold water hit me like a slap, dripping down my chin, soaking into my shirt. Drop dead already, you worthless old leech. Do us all a favor and just die like Dorothy did. She stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, water still dripping from my face onto the floor. Then she turned and marched back up the stairs without another word, slamming the basement door behind her. I sat motionless for several minutes, feeling the water soak through my collar, tasting it on my lips. Then I walked to the small bathroom in the corner of the basement and looked at myself in the mirror. Water dripped from my gray hair. My shirt was ruined, and in my eyes I saw something that had been building for 8 months finally click into place. I started to smile. For 8 months I'd been playing the role of the grieving, helpless widower. For 8 months I'd watched my son stand by silently while his wife treated me like garbage. For 8 months I'd waited to see if there was any decency left in the boy Dorothy and I had raised. The water dripping from my face was my answer. I walked back to the main room and picked up my phone. It was time to make some calls. Time to set things in motion that I should have started the day Dorothy died. Time to remind my son and his wife that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake you ever make. First, I took several photos of myself, water-soaked, disheveled, humiliated. Then, I sent a text to Marcus Webb, my attorney for the past 25 years, whom Bradley and Megan didn't know existed. Marcus, we need to accelerate everything. Can we meet tomorrow morning? His response came within 2 minutes. Of course, Walter, is everything okay? I touched my wet shirt and felt my smile grow wider. Everything is perfect. It's time. Marcus Webb's law firm occupied the penthouse suite of a glass tower in downtown Minneapolis. As I stepped out of the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished marble walls. A 64-year-old man in a worn flannel shirt and discount store pants, looking every bit the struggling retiree Bradley and Megan believed me to be. The receptionist showed me to Marcus's corner office where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Marcus stood as I entered, his expression shifting to concern when he saw me. Walter, you look terrible. What happened? My daughter-in-law happened. I settled into the leather chair across from his mahogany desk. She decided I needed a lesson in knowing my place. Tell me everything. I told him about the rent demand, the medication request, the glass of water thrown in my face. I showed him the photos. When I finished, Marcus's jaw was tight with barely contained anger. That's assault, Walter. We could press charges. We could, but I have something better in mind. I leaned forward. I want to execute everything we've been planning. All of it. This week if possible. Marcus opened a thick file on his desk. A file that Bradley and Megan would be shocked to know existed. Let's review what we're working with. For the next 2 hours, Marcus walked me through the financial empire that Dorothy and I had spent 4 decades building. The house Bradley and Megan lived in, the house they believed was theirs through a mortgage they thought they were paying, was actually owned by a trust I controlled. I'd bought it from them 18 months ago through a shell corporation without their knowledge. They'd been paying rent to their own father without realizing it. That property was worth $8 million, but that was just the beginning. We owned 23 other properties scattered across 6 states, commercial buildings in Chicago, apartment complexes in Phoenix, a shopping center in Atlanta, a beachfront property in San Diego that we'd bought 30 years ago for practically nothing and was now worth $2 million. Our stock portfolio held $8 million in diverse investments. The commercial real estate company Dorothy had founded and sold 12 years ago still paid us a $340,000 annually in consulting fees through an agreement that wouldn't expire for another 15 years. Then there were the private investments. A chain of urgent care clinics that had exploded in value, a tech company that had gone public 3 years ago, a manufacturing firm that produced specialty medical equipment. Current total net worth, Marcus said, running his finger down a column of figures. $4 million. $4 While Megan was throwing water in my face and demanding $750 a month in rent for a damp basement apartment, while Bradley was lecturing me about being financially responsible. While they both treated me like a charity case who should be grateful for their scraps. What about the house? I asked. We can list it tomorrow. Given the market and the location, I'd estimate we'll have multiple cash offers within 48 hours. We could close within 2 weeks. Do it. And the apartment building in Street Paul, the one where Bradley thinks his friend Kevin is the property manager. Marcus smiled slightly. Also yours. You've been paying Bradley a management fee through a property company you own to manage a building that you own. The money goes in a circle right back to your accounts. The absurdity of it was almost beautiful. For over a year, I'd been paying my son to manage my own property while he complained about how much I was costing him. I want them out of everything, I said. The house, any properties they think they have claims to, any accounts they think they control. I want them to wake up one morning and realize they have nothing. Walter, are you certain? This is pretty nuclear. I thought about the water dripping down my face, about Bradley standing upstairs, probably knowing exactly what his wife was doing to me, choosing to do nothing. About Dorothy's final words to me in the hospital. Don't let them win, sweetheart. Promise me you won't let them win. I'm certain. Where will you be when all this happens? I smiled for the first time since entering his office. Do you remember that property Dorothy fell in love with 3 years ago? The villa outside Sorrento on the Amalfi Coast. You didn't. Dorothy and I put the deposit down 6 weeks before she died. She made me promise to go through with the purchase, even if she wasn't there to enjoy it with me. It's been waiting for me this whole time. Sam won. $2 million for a villa overlooking the Mediterranean with lemon groves and a view that would make you weep. Marcus whistled low. Dorothy would have loved this. Dorothy planned this. Every detail. She always said that if Bradley chose Megan over family, we should make sure he understood the full cost of that choice. We spent the rest of the meeting finalizing details. The house would be listed Friday morning. The eviction notices would be delivered Monday. Within 30 days, Bradley and Megan would be out of every property I owned with no warning and no financial safety net. One more thing, I said as I stood to leave. The life insurance policy that names Bradley as beneficiary. The one for $25 million, what about it? Cancel it today and rewrite my will. Bradley gets exactly 1, Megan gets nothing. Everything else goes to charity, specifically to the domestic violence shelter Dorothy volunteered at for 20 years. Marcus made notes. And if Bradley contests the will, let him try. I've had full medical and psychological evaluations done over the past 6 months specifically to prove mental competency. Every decision I've made has been documented, witnessed, and notarized. They can hire every lawyer in the state. They'll lose. As I walked out of Marcus's office into the bright Minnesota afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in years. The plan was in motion. The wheels were turning, and Bradley and Megan had no idea that their comfortable life was about to collapse around them. They thought they held all the power, all the control, all the cards. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next 2 weeks passed with agonizing slowness. I continued playing my role, the struggling father. Grateful for every scrap of attention, apologetic for existing. Megan avoided me almost entirely after the water incident, which suited me fine. Bradley came down to the basement exactly twice, both times to remind me about the rent payment that would be due soon. "Dad, you need to figure something out," he said during his second visit. "Megan stressed enough without worrying about carrying you financially." I looked at my son, the boy who'd once helped me build a treehouse in our backyard, who'd cried at his mother's funeral, who'd somewhere along the way become a stranger and felt something between pity and disgust. "I'll figure something out, Bradley. I always do." He nodded without really hearing me and went back upstairs to his wife. The house sold on a Thursday afternoon, 17 days after it was listed. 3 cash offers had come in within the first week, just as Marcus predicted. The winning bid was to $1,300,000 over asking price from a young tech executive relocating from Seattle with his wife and 2 children. I signed the papers in Marcus's conference room while the buyers discussed their plans for the home where Bradley had grown up, where Dorothy and I had hosted countless Thanksgiving dinners, where our family had once been happy. The previous occupants, the wife asked, "When do they need to be out?" "They'll receive notice Monday morning." Marcus assured her, "You can take possession by the end of next week." I accepted a cashier's check for $2,001 million and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. That evening, I sat in my basement apartment and wrote the letter I'd been composing in my head for months. "Bradley and Megan, by the time you read this, I will be gone. The house you've been living in was sold last Thursday to a lovely family who will take possession in 10 days. You have until then to remove your belongings. This is not negotiable. You may be wondering how this is possible since you believed you were taking care of your poor, struggling father. The truth is that your mother and I spent 6 years watching you, waiting to see who you really were beneath the surface. Megan, your performance was flawless from the beginning. From the moment you walked into our home, you calculated our worth and positioned yourself to extract every possible dollar. You convinced my son that his parents were burdens while systematically turning him against the people who loved him most. Bradley, you allowed your wife to treat me like garbage because it was easier than standing up to her. You let her convince you that I was worthless, useless, and dependent on your charity. You heard her throw water in my face and call me a worthless old leech. And you did nothing. You chose nothing. The reality is this. Your mother and I accumulated a net worth of approximately $11.4 million during our marriage. We owned 23 properties, maintained extensive investment portfolios, and built businesses that continue to generate substantial income. You knew about none of it. While Megan was demanding $750 a month in rent from me for a basement apartment, I was earning more in investment returns each week than you make in a month. While you were lecturing me about financial responsibility, I was making decisions about millions of dollars in assets. The house you've been living in, I own it. I bought it 18 months ago through a trust you never knew existed. You've been paying rent to your own father while treating him like a burden. The life insurance policy that would have paid you $5 million canceled. The will that would have made you wealthy beyond your dreams rewritten. Bradley, you will inherit exactly $1. Megan will inherit nothing. The rest goes to the domestic violence shelter your mother supported for 20 years. A fitting destination given how I've been treated in this house. I'm not doing this out of spite or revenge. I'm doing this because your mother asked me to. In her final days, she made me promise that if you chose Megan's cruelty over family loyalty, I would make sure you understood the full cost of that choice. The water your wife threw in my face was simply the final confirmation. I have photos, documentation, and witnesses. If either of you attempts to contact me or challenge any of these decisions, I will pursue whatever legal remedies are available to me. I am leaving the country permanently. Do not try to find me. You had 6 years to show basic human decency to the man who raised you, Bradley. You chose instead to listen to a woman who saw dollar signs every time she looked at our family. I hope she was worth it. Walter Pease. Megan, you may want to start looking for employment. Bradley, you may want to start looking for a wife who loves you more than she loves the idea of what you might inherit. Unfortunately, there's nothing left to inherit. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope with both their names. On Monday morning, I would leave it on their kitchen counter and walk out of their lives forever. But first, I had one final task. I'd arrange for a car service to pick me up at 50 Other M. Monday morning, early enough that Bradley and Megan would still be asleep. I'd packed only 2 suitcases. Most of my belongings would stay behind. After all, you can't take much when you're starting over at 64. What I could take were the things that mattered. Dorothy's wedding ring, which I wore on a chain around my neck, photo albums that Bradley had never bothered to look at, a few books that had shaped my life, and a small cedar box containing every letter Dorothy had written me during our 39 years together. The flight to Naples left at 8 a.m., with a connection through JFK. I'd arrive at the villa by Tuesday evening, Italian time. Sunday night, I barely slept, not from anxiety, from anticipation. I kept imagining Bradley and Megan waking up Monday morning, coming downstairs for their expensive coffee, finding my letter on the granite countertop next to Megan's collection of artisanal tea blends. I pictured Megan's face when she realized that her 6-year investment in manipulating my son had not only failed, but had cost them everything. I thought about Bradley reading my words and finally understanding that the father he dismissed as a pathetic old man had been orchestrating their downfall from the moment they showed him who they really were. But mostly I thought about Dorothy, about how proud she would be that I'd finally found the courage to walk away from people who didn't deserve my love. At 40:45 a.m. Monday morning, I carried my 2 suitcases up the basement stairs for the last time. The house was silent, still dark. Bradley and Megan wouldn't wake for another 2 hours at least. I placed the letter on the kitchen island, exactly where Megan would see it when she came down for her morning smoothie. Then I walked through each room one final time. The living room where Bradley had taken his first steps. The den where we'd watched Vikings games together when he was young. The dining room where Dorothy had hosted Christmas dinner every year, until Megan decided our traditions were too old-fashioned for her taste. In Bradley's old room, I stopped and looked at the walls that still held his Little League trophies and his Eagle Scout certificate. This was the room of a boy who'd been raised with love, who'd been taught to respect his elders and cherish his family. Somehow that boy had grown into a man who could stand by silently while his wife humiliated his own father. I turned and walked out, leaving my key on the counter next to the letter. At exactly 5 a.m., the car service pulled into the driveway. I loaded my bags into the trunk and took one last look at the house where I'd raised my son, where I'd built a life with Dorothy, where everything had once been good. Then I got in the car and drove away without looking back. My flight landed in Naples at 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, Italian time. As we descended through the clouds, I caught my first glimpse of the Amalfi Coast dramatic cliffs plunging into impossibly blue water, ancient towns clinging to hillsides, and everywhere the golden light of the Mediterranean sun. The customs officer barely glanced at my passport before stamping it. Business or pleasure? Signor. Home, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I'm coming home. A driver named Josephi was waiting for me in the arrival area with a sign that read Señor Walter. He was a man in his late 50s with kind eyes and a warm smile, and he greeted me like an old friend. Señor Walter, benvenuto. Welcome to Italia, the villa. She is ready for you. Signora Lucia has been preparing for weeks. The drive from Naples to Sorrento took just over an hour, winding along coastal roads that offered views so beautiful they made my chest ache. Dorothy should have been here for this. She dreamed of this moment for 3 years, planned every detail, and never got to see it. But she'd made me promise, and I was keeping that promise. The villa appeared as we turned off the main road onto a private lane lined with lemon trees. It was everything the photos had promised and more, 3 stories of sun-washed stone with blue shutters surrounded by terrace gardens that overlooked the Bay of Naples. In the distance, I could see the silhouette of Mount Vesuvius against the evening sky. Jep helped me with my bags, and before I could knock, the front door opened to reveal a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested a lifetime of laughter. Senor Walter, she embraced me like family, kissing both my cheeks. Finally, you are here. I am Lucia, your wife. She wrote to me many times about this moment. Come, come. I have dinner waiting. The inside of the villa was even more beautiful than I'd imagined. High ceilings with exposed wooden beams, floors of polished terracotta tile, windows that framed the Mediterranean like living paintings. And everywhere the scent of lemons and sea air. Your wife, Lucia said as she led me to a terrace overlooking the water. She had such dreams for this place. She sent me photos of flowers she wanted to plant, recipes she wanted to try. When I heard she had passed, she crossed herself. I knew you would still come. Love like that. It does not die with the body. That night, I ate the best meal of my life on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, fresh pasta with tomatoes from the villa's garden, locally caught fish, bread that had been baked that morning, and wine from a vineyard just up the coast. As the sun set and the first stars appeared, I raised my glass to the sky. We made it. Dorothy, I whispered. We really made it. It was 3 days later when my phone exploded with notifications. I was sitting in the villa's garden watching fishing boats return to the harbor below when it started buzzing. 23 missed calls from Bradley. 15 text messages. 4 voicemails. I played the first voicemail on speaker. Dad, what the hell is going on? Bradley's voice was frantic, panicked. We came home Monday and found your letter, and there are people here saying they bought the house. They're telling us we have 10 days to leave. Call me back right now. This has to be some kind of mistake. The second voicemail was Megan. You vindictive old bastard. You think you can do this to us. We'll sue you for everything you have. We'll prove you were mentally incompetent. You'll regret this for the rest of your pathetic. I deleted it before she finished. The third was Bradley again, but his tone had changed. Broken. Dad, please. I know things got bad. I know Megan went too far sometimes, but you're my father. We can work this out. Just call me back, please. I sat there for a long moment, looking at the phone, then at the Mediterranean stretching out before me. In the garden below, Lucia was hanging laundry, humming an Italian song. I didn't recognize the lemon trees were heavy with fruit. The air smelled like salt and flowers and possibility. I turned off the phone and went inside to help Lucia prepare dinner. Over the following months, I built a new life. I learned Italian from Lucia's grandchildren, who found my accent hilarious. I helped harvest lemons and olives from the villa's groves. I took cooking classes in the village and learned to make fresh pasta from an 80-year-old grandmother who didn't speak a word of English. I made friends with the fishermen who docked their boats in the harbor below my villa, with the priest at the local church, who invited me to Sunday dinners, with the pharmacist who helped me get my medications refilled and refused to let me pay full price because Americans already pay too much for everything. These people didn't see me as a burden. They saw me as a neighbor, a friend, a member of their community. They invited me to festivals and weddings and christenings. They brought me food when I was sick and wine when I was well. They treated me with the basic human dignity that my own son and his wife had denied me for years. 6 months after arriving in Italy, I received a letter forwarded through Marcus's office. Dad, I don't know if you'll read this, but I had to try one more time. Megan and I are getting divorced. She's been having an affair with her personal trainer for almost 2 years. I found out after you left, when I started questioning everything about our life together. I've been doing a lot of thinking since you've been gone about the kind of man Mom raised me to be and the kind of man I became. They're not the same person. I remember when I was 12 and I broke Mr. Patterson's window with a baseball. You made me go over there and apologize, then work in his yard for a month to pay for the replacement. You told me that being a man meant taking responsibility for my mistakes, even when it was hard. I didn't do that with you. I didn't take responsibility for how Megan treated you. I told myself it wasn't that bad, that you were being oversensitive, that she was just stressed. I was a coward. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness. I know I don't deserve either one. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand why you left, and I don't blame you. I'm working with a therapist now, trying to figure out how I became someone who could watch his wife throw water in his father's face and do nothing. I don't like the answers I'm finding, but I think that's the point. I hope you're happy, Dad, wherever you are. You and Mom both deserved better than what I gave you. I love you. I always did, even when I wasn't showing it, Bradley. I read the letter 3 times, then walked out to Dorothy's memorial garden, a small corner of the villa grounds, where I'd planted her favorite flowers and placed a bench overlooking the water. I sat there until the sun set, thinking about the boy Bradley had been and the man he'd become and the person he might still be capable of becoming. The next morning, I called Marcus. Change Bradley's inheritance, I told him. Not to the full amount, just enough to help him start over. The 50,000. Are you sure, Walter? I thought about Dorothy, about what she would have wanted, about the balance between justice and mercy that she'd always been better at finding than me. I'm sure he's finally learning the cost of his choices. That's what Dorothy wanted. Not his destruction, just his understanding. That evening, I sat on my terrace with a glass of limoncello made from lemons grown in my own garden. The lights of Sorrento twinkled across the water. Church bells rang in the village below, calling the faithful to evening mass. I raised my glass to the stars that were appearing one by one in the darkening sky. Thank you, Dorothy, I whispered, for the plan, for the villa, for 39 years of love that taught me I was worth more than how they treated me. A warm breeze carried the scent of lemons in the sea. Somewhere in the village, someone was playing a guitar. Luca's grandchildren were laughing in the garden below. At 64, I discovered that it's never too late to start over. Never too late to choose dignity over dysfunction. Never too late to walk away from people who don't deserve your love and toward people who do. The Mediterranean stretched out before me, endless and blue and full of possibility. I was finally